Okay, so this segment, I hope to make it as short as possible, is major challenging events you had in life. Let's see. So my childhood, I'll just put in one lump. Um, it was my mom, my dad. I had an older sister who's 3 years older than me. And it was an extremely abusive home on all levels, mental, emotional, SA. Um, it was physical abuse all the time. And when I lived in Queens, this is back in New York. I was born in Queens and lived in Queens until I was in third grade. And then we moved to Long Island. So the abuse started very young. And it's very weird because I didn't start to remember the abuse that started when I was a baby in a crib. It surfaced later in my life. I had visions of it when I was either asleep or waking up from sleep. And um, and then I never said anything to anybody. And then I had a couple of readings, and both women, both people reading me, I don't know, I don't remember what they were, like mediums or I don't know. I'm sure it doesn't matter in the context of the story. But they both said that I had started to be sexually abused when I was a baby, and I knew this to be true. So it's really a shame. Um, but that was a major theme. And also because of my older sister, I don't know if she was also being abused because we never talked about it. I do remember an incident when I was having my communion. So I don't know, because I grew up Roman Catholic. I don't know how old you are, maybe 7 or 8 or something. And I won't say what she did, but she did something and it was really gross. And I told her to stop. And I think it was because she was having abuse also, and she was trying to abuse me. Yeah. And so it's just very sick and twisted. So anyway, it makes me feel gross to even talk about it. But yeah, so I don't know. Again, like I wouldn't even be going into these um incidents or events, but you were asking for it on your sheet. So I had all the growing up, and I'm talking about like my a dad would abuse my mom. He would beat her, push her. I mean, I can't even tell you. He was very like old school traditional Italian. Like they were both first generation Italians back in New York, and then my mom would take it out on us. So she would just yell and scream, but I always got the impression my mom was afraid of my dad, and understandably so, I suppose. But then she would beat on me, and my dad only one time like really put his hands on me, in terms of physically beating me. Other than that, it was other kinds of abuse like the SA or doing weird things like when I was home alone with him. Yeah, I guess I'm not just not going to say anything. It's really disturbing. Um, but I'm talking about like I never felt safe. I didn't even have when we moved to Long Island, and I don't know. I guess because I fought back, my parents, it might have just been specifically my mom, I don't remember, but they removed my bedroom door, so I didn't have like a bedroom door for a long time. And I would try to hide in my closet, and I would spend like hours in my closet. I even had like a little poem on the wall. I would take like a little flashlight and I would just read the poem and meditate and pray. And I would hide, and then they would pull me out of the closet. So it was really scary, even just thinking about it. Gosh, I would get woken up in the middle of the night because I left a dish in the sink in the kitchen. My mom would scream and pull me out of bed and be hitting me all the way downstairs and watch me while I like cleaned the dish. I mean, it's like I'm sure you can understand why I would leave. Um, yeah. And I remember there was one time we're able to afford to go on a vacation. We went to Disney in Florida. You know, again, this is me living in New York. And my dad was just awful, like road rage in the car. I mean, the whole time I just never felt safe my entire time being around any of them. And at one point, because we all stayed in the same hotel room, I remember my dad getting angry about something, and all I remember is he was screaming, and my sister was screaming, and he was strangling her on her neck. And I was hiding under like a little table. You know how some hotel rooms have like a small little table with a couple of chairs? I was hiding under there, and I think I just like willed myself to like, stay hidden until it was all over. And the next morning, when I was with my mom, it was me, my mom, my sister, and I think my dad was still in the hotel room, but we were walking out of the hotel room, and the neighboring hotel room, a man walked out and gave my mom a look and then closed his door and went back inside his hotel room. And my mom said to us, "Be nice to your father." The man next door said something to him about what he did last night. So just be nice to him because he's upset about that. And I just, to this day, like if I happen to remember that memory, I just can't believe that was how I was being conditioned to like walk on eggshells because, my dad was embarrassed by the guy, the stranger in the room next to us after he basically abused every one of us in the room. Like it's just horrifying. So, one thing that I'll circle back because you do ask on the form any connections or patterns between early childhood traumas and current issues. I think I do. I mentioned to you how I, was laid off and my unemployment ended after 6 months. I didn't know, I was just job searching and interviewing and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know, I thought it went at least a year, until you found a job. And that's when I had to move to Miami. And then I came back to San Diego, all that. So I remember staying with my friend Carly, and I think I mentioned to you in the consult that I didn't know she had like alcoholism issues. And the funny thing is that she was nicer when she was drunk. I never experienced this before. I don't know. But she was also like, she would tell me, she's the one that like begged me to stay with her, by the way, which is like what makes this also all the more confusing. I think because she didn't have many friends that could tolerate her. I don't know. That's the only sense I could get, but like she would tell me the shower, like the shower curtain, I had to leave a gap of like, I don't know what it was, like 4 or 5 inches. And there were times she would come to me if I was sitting she had a tiny little apartment too with two small dogs, so the four of us. She would be like, "Can I show you something in the bathroom?" And she would take a ruler. I mean, this is like mommy dearest stuff. This is like mind blowing. And she would show me how it wasn't exactly whatever it was again, like 4 inches. And she would be like, "Can you please make sure going forward?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm very sorry." And meanwhile, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how do I get out of here?" That's when I had to take the job at the supermarket, and I was managing the acupuncture clinic, like the office manager kind of thing. And I was just trying to like figure out how to get out, and I did. But I mentioned that because it felt like similar to childhood where I like tolerated being so miserable just because I felt like I had to survive. And there's so many more things that she was doing. And at first I just felt sorry for her. But then she was treating me so badly. I wanted to be like, screw this. You know what I mean? Like I never was rude to her or yelled at her. Like I still maintained, my dignity, I suppose you could say. I don't know. But man, I could tell I could write a book on just that. And then I ended up renting a room in this woman's house in La Mesa, which I'd never done that before. I didn't even know people did that. And that was a similar energy to Carly. Again, this woman ended up having alcoholism issues. And she would like stand over me if I was like using the sink or something. And she'd be like, "Now wipe the sink, make sure you get all the water. We don't want any rust stains." And like she would just like, And she had friends that would stay over because the house was big enough. She had a guest room also. And one of the first friends that I met that was staying there told me she came to my room, which was on one side of the house, and was like, "You need to get out of here. You have such a bright spirit, and she's gonna quash that in you. Like she's gonna, you can't stay here." And I was like, "What?" Like I immediately went into like, "What are you talking about?" Well, meanwhile, I knew what she was saying, but she was just on such high alert. It put me into like an elevated, like, what the hell kind of. And she was like, "Don't, I know she has to be the same to you. She already drove out other tenants and blah, blah, blah." And I ended up, because this woman, her name was Linda, the friend, her name was Linda, she was connected with the previous tenant. Her name was like Kristen or something. And I connected with Kristen on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. And I asked her, like, I'm sure this is probably quite random, but if we have something in common, I live in so and so's house and having a really challenging time. And I wonder if you'd be open to a phone call if I could, like, kind of try to make sense of this with you and your sharing of your experience. And she was super sweet, of course, and nice. And she actually said it was awful. She stayed there for 2 years. I ended up only living with this woman for 6 months, and then I figured out how to find an apartment because by then I had gotten a job. Like I ha was able to leave the supermarket and the jobs that like I never thought I would be doing. And I'm not saying that to be like poo-pooing them, just saying like I went to college and I have other passions. I never would be satisfied with doing that. So that's how I mean it. I just want to be clear. I'm sure you can pick up on it, but hopefully, it sounded rude how I just said that. So anyway, um, yeah, so she told me that, because I was only there for 6 months. She was there for 2 years, and I was like, "How did you handle it?" Because by this time, her and I, we were friends. We'd meet up and go for a walk in the park, or, she needed help with something for her energy healing business, and I helped her set stuff up, blah, 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 like we were friends. And she told me that she actually thought it was helping her heal through her relationship with her mom. Like, like she wasn't living with her mom, but I guess this woman, her name was Sherry. It feels weird to say her name. I guess that was like a substitute for her to act out, like what had happened with her mom growing up. And so she felt like it was karma, and she like, I don't know if she used the word deserved it or some, but like she stayed to like tolerate it and get through it. And I was like, even after like the first month, even probably after the first week, I was like, this is definitely temporary. So what I want to highlight here, if you're still listening, is that I used to hide in the bedroom. If I tried to be out as much as I could, and then I would hide in the bedroom and my bathroom, because she had a huge master bedroom. I mean, it had like a set of stairs in it, up to her bathroom with a whole like um, spa tub and stuff. I don't know. It was never in that area of the house. But my bathroom was just like a regular bathroom that was in a hallway, but it was close to her bedroom and on the other side of the house from my bedroom, which was kind of a weird setup. Um, so anyway, I would hide, even if I had to go to the bathroom, I would like, I know it sounds so silly, but it's real. I would hold it in until I knew she wasn't like walking around about the house, like she had gone to her room for the night, or, I knew it was late and she was sleeping already. And I used to do that as a kid, to stay in somewhat of a safe space because it was like a freaking war field outside, even in my bedroom, but at least that was like some semblance of safety. But I would not go to the bathroom because we had a bathroom on the first floor and in the basement, and our bedrooms were on the second floor. So in the house I grew up in. So I would do that. I would hold it in and hide. And so I was aware that I was like repeating the same cycle. And yes, I was able to leave there after 6 months. So I don't know if that means like progress or what. All I care about is that I got the heck out of there, to be honest. Um, but yeah, that is those, I guess you could say, were traumas of my growing up, which is what I just shared with you. I mean, there's so much more, but I think you just need to know in one lump sum, right? Um, and then, about um, in my college, I left that video about the incident when I was a sophomore in college and out of the country, and I was attacked, beaten, raped. Yeah. And then I was actually a couple years later, this is when I was out in Arizona. So after I had transferred schools, and so this is like the summer, I want to say of like 96, maybe the summer before my senior year. I can't remember. But most of my friends had either started traveling for the summer or went home or whatever. And there were only a few of us that were staying for the summer. I took a class, I had to work, I was a waitress, I had a couple of internships, yada, yada. So I had an apartment, a really cheap apartment in a seedy area with my friend Charlene or Charmaine. And anyway, this guy that I was like only on a couple dates with, yeah, Charlene, I was in the pool area with my like date guy. I don't can't call him my boyfriend. And Charlene was leaving with her boyfriend and locked the apartment door when I didn't have my key. And it's a whole thing that angered me for so long, Dr. Pantea, because I had specifically told her, yelled up to her, like, if you leave, let me know because I don't have my key. And she said yes. And still she left with her boyfriend and locked the door. So we waited a couple hours. This is well before cell phones, like I said, this is like 96 or whatever, maybe 95, I don't know. And I had to go back to his house after a while and he's like because we waited like it was like dark and so yeah, I did not want I knew it was like I didn't know what else I could have done. Like in hindsight, obviously there's other choices. I could have just like walked to a police station. I don't know what I could have done. But I didn't know what was going to happen. I couldn't imagine. And I ended up going back to his apartment, and then the rape happened. And then I was really mad at my roommate, but I couldn't really, like, the word hate comes to mind. I'm sure I felt feelings of hate, but I couldn't hate her because it's not like she did it on purpose. It was just very confusing, frustrating, scary. And I felt so disgusted. And it's the same cycle where I had to stay the night. I kept trying to call my apartment because again, we didn't have cell phones, we had a landline. And oh, and she just like never answered. Even late at night. I think she might have stayed over her boyfriend's house or something, and that might have been why. But when I even had him drive me home. It's like the same cycle, right? It's like I have to like put on a strong face and suck it up just to survive, and it's excruciating. Um, then I had my abusive relationship, which I told you about, that went on for like 4 years, where, yeah, um, I was abusive in all ways as well. Um, when that's the only boyfriend that I lived with, and we actually ended up being engaged, if you can believe it. It's just, yeah, mind-boggling. Like, I totally get when people look at victims of domestic abuse, domestic violence, whether it's a man or a woman, I know it mainly happens to women, but they look at the women and say, like, why would you stay? Or, like you almost got away. Why did you go back? And, like I totally get it. I understand why. It's freaking scary. It's a total, excuse the expression, but a total mind fuck. And like it plays into all of like these people that are super manipulative, um, they know how to push your buttons and figure you out and get you. They're like masters at it. So I had to give myself a lot of grace, but it took many years and still, yeah, there's like more to that story in my later years, but I think I might have covered it in the other video, and that's all that matters there, I guess. But I haven't really dated. And I think it's because I just don't trust I haven't met somebody where the energy feels like right. So anyway, also I want to say in like 2008, so this is me in my 20s. I'm back in the city, like back in New York. This is a few years before I moved out to San Diego in 2010. So it was probably around 2008 when this happened. I was attacked outside my apartment building and it was dark, but it was only like 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I was fully alert. It wasn't like I had my like iPod like going on, like not paying attention to my surroundings because I was walking back from the train to my apartment, which I'd done all the time. You take the subway, blah blah. And um and this guy had followed me and it was really traumatic. It was I didn't this building I lived in didn't have a doorman or anything or like it had call buttons to call up to the different apartments. But then you just used your key to open that outer door, and then you went through a foyer, and then there was another door. I think there was another locked door, yeah. And then you went up to your apartment or whatever. So anyway, this guy, I knew only when I turned in to go to the door, I noticed he was behind me. Wow, I'm getting freaked out even just telling you the story right now because I'm alone in my apartment. Um, he was behind me and so I had my keys out, and instead of putting the key in the door and opening it, I was like, "Oh, why don't you go?" I'm like, I know you don't live here," like, or said something like that, like, "What apartment are you in? I never saw you." I said something like that, and he's like, "Oh, my sister lives here," and I was like, "Oh, call her." Um, and he was like sort of pretending to, and then it happened so fast. He like turned around and grabbed me. He had his hand over my mouth really tight, so he was like behind me. And then he used his other hand to put up my skirt, and I couldn't scream or anything, and I couldn't even use my feet to like stomp on his feet. Like there was hardly anything I could do. And I remember I had also taken like Krav Maga, that Israeli training and stuff. I had all this training, not to say I was like, super expert at it, but it's almost like in those moments, even what it's so scary and it happens so fast. There's times you can't do anything. I don't know. So, I tried biting down on his fingers. I couldn't. So what I ended up being able to do was raise my arm that had my keys, and I was trying to stab his eyes because he's like his head's behind my head. And I got him in the face with my key. I think I got him in the eye, and he was able to loosen his grip on my mouth, and I yelled, "Rape!" And because the buildings are so close, so again, back in New York, someone's window went shoop, and the guy, my neighbor, that I didn't really know well, but and he's like, "Hey, you, get the fuck out of here." And he yells at the guy and he's like, "I'm calling the police." And I was like, and then the guy just like took off. And I just remember like being so grateful to my neighbor. And I was like, "Thank you." And then I went into being really mad and the police came and I was really surprised. The police came, it didn't take them long to get there and they took me for a drive around my immediate area. And then they told me it was one of those men, the like day laborers, workers that hang around. They come off the train at a certain time at night and just start drinking beer. And I swear I didn't smell alcohol. And this guy's face was so close to mine. But they said that my neighbor, reported that when the guy tried to run away, he kind of staggered a little bit, like he might have been drunk. So I don't know. I think I don't want to admit it because then that means I couldn't even fight off a drunk guy. It's really scary to think back. And I don't know why I yelled rape instead of like I've heard before you're supposed to yell like fire or something. I don't know. But thankfully I'm grateful to that guy who is my neighbor. And yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to make this short, but the times that I've had some traumas yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I don't know. Oh, and I might have mentioned I wrote on the forum that when I was a very little kid, I was like 3, 4, 5, I think maybe closer to 5. We used to have when I lived in Queens before we moved to Long Island, again, I'm a little kid. We used to have a little bungalow in upstate, and we would go out there in the summer, and there's a lake. And so we used to rent inner tubes. And so I thought I was a big kid and I wasn't. And I asked for the bigger tube, even though they told me it was too big for me, these like black inner tubes. Anyway, Dr. Pantea, all I remember is um, my parents were asking my sister, who was 3 years older, to watch me, and I don't know where they went. And so all I remember is this energy of them not being there. It was just me and my sister. It's not like they were in the water with us or anything. And I remember the black, like the top of the inner tube where my arms were when I was trying to like keep, up out of the water. And so I could see, what was going on around me. It got really hot from the sun. So I kept dipping down the middle and I ended up swallowing a lot of water. And I think I nearly drowned. I mean, I guess saying I drowned means I died, and I don't think I died. So I'll say I nearly drowned. And all I remember is again, like what happened before I started to go under the water. And then I suddenly like woke up and she seemed like an old lady to me. She's probably like the age I am now, which is hilarious to me. Uh, but she was like this old lady, a stranger, and she was giving me like the stomach compressions or whatever and stuff. And I just remember being in the sand and a lot of people were standing around and I um, came back. So um, I don't think it was like an NDE because it's not like I remember anything while I was unconscious or in the middle of almost drowning. So, but I think I'd love to hear your insight on what I'm about to say because I've always wondered about this but I've heard about end points before or exit points that when we plan out our lives on the other side before we incarnate or reincarnate, that we give ourselves outs. And so I think I was giving myself an out, to be honest, and I decided to stay. And when I learned about these exit points, that memory, although I had forgotten about it, came back really strongly, and I think that's the case. So, yeah. And interestingly enough, about exit points. So, I might have mentioned to you about how I grew up that it was extremely like every day, it was like just had to fear for my life in that house, and disgusting things and violent things and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, there were moments of calm where I don't know, we would just come back from church or something, and my dad would have me in the den and he would talk to me about Edgar Cayce, or he had pictures of Padre Pio, and he would talk to me about, I forget what it's called when Padre Pio's hands would bleed. Um, which Padre Pio is still like really close to my heart, by the way, regardless of my dad. But so yeah, I remember that my sister was also like gifted, I guess you could say. And she would have some crazy things happen where she would like open the refrigerator door and a ring would come flying out. And it would be like a ring that was like lost and no one even knew. Like if it was, I don't know, my dad's ring. I can't remember that specifically, but I do remember the essence of it being like the person who lost it hadn't even said they lost it kind of thing. And then it would just come flying out. And my sister would just think all these things were normal, you know? And my sister, when we were very young, I think it was definitely when we still lived in Queens, and I moved when I was in third grade. I started third grade in Long Island. So, however, whatever age that is, I remember at that time, my sister was so young, still saying that my dad was going to die when he was 59. And my mom would be like, "That's so young. Like, that's not going to happen, Christine," or I don't know. And my dad did ended up dying at 59 and I had to go back for the funeral, and and my sister said, well, he asked to go early. That's how she put it. He asked to go early. He took up the offer on the exit point or something like that, she said. And I was like, what? That was still like all new to me. But it's just so crazy. It blows my mind, My sister was very sick. I think we dealt with what was going on in the home and whatever we asked to live out in our lives. Like it was very different for us, even though we were sisters and growing up in the same house. My sister ended up totally like isolating herself, and she was basically like homeschooled. She was super shy. She didn't have like any friends, which blew my mind because in high school, like that's your time to like explore and have different friends, and I never understood it, but I tried to be compassionate towards my sister, and she was just vicious to me. I mean, vicious. And I know that if she was in pain, she probably did things just because she was in pain, but that doesn't justify how vicious she was to me her whole life, like all the times I was around her and knew her. I mean, just vicious. But she ended up having like gastrointestinal issues or something. And I remember my mom having a phone conversation with one of her friends when my sister was like up in her bedroom, or I was the only one who could hear. And my mom was explaining that they were like psychosomatic. And my sister, she just had to keep taking my sister to the doctor because she wanted, in case my mom was wrong, she wanted to make sure my sister got the medical attention she needed. But she thought that's just how my sister, like her daughter, was just like dealing with everything. Yeah, which also reminds me, when I was growing up, I was a huge like bedwetter, and I think I was doing that because of all the abuse that was happening. So, I got over that. Uh, it's not like it went into my teens or anything. I was definitely like less than 7 years old, but when it stopped, I don't know, 6, 5. But I just remember like after I was potty trained, I was like wetting the bed, and it was scary for me because it was like I was not in control of my body, and that was probably another theme. So I'm just throwing everything out there in case it means something. And as I'm saying it, I don't know if you pick up energetically and somehow get some other insight. So I may be sharing too much. But I also, again, like I said, I'm a little like, I don't know how to navigate this because of the form. Otherwise, I thought we were just going to talk about this stuff when we had the session. So all that is what I'm saying is just to say I apologize if this isn't the best way to do it. But instead of filling out the form, I figured again, like I'm beating the horse here by saying it so many times. But yeah, I'm just listing this out in the video. So, okay, thank you so much. All right, that's it for the major challenging events.